silence him. They erased his name. But he rebuilt from nothing. He fought every algorithm. They tried again and failed. Now he's back, stronger. From blackout to spotlight, he's at the White House, at the top of his game. Franchi lives.
You are about to enter another dimension, the dimension of truth, unfiltered and uncensored. Welcome to the Raw Feed with Gary Franchi.
Welcome to the Raw Feed. I'm Gary Franchi, coming to you live from the heart of America. Unfiltered truth to millions on YouTube. Hit those donation links below. Every contribution powers our gear. Every contribution keeps the party going. Help me help you. Hit those donation links. YouTube channel memberships. Special acknowledgement in the fellowship. Your super chats keep me standing. Your Rumble rants fuel every round.
Say hello to super chats.
Spread the intel. Every repost extends our reach.
Super chats fuel this spectacle. Your Rumble rants give me strength.
24/7 members-only community, behind-the-scenes discussions.
Connect with fellow patriots.
My mama always said, life is like sharing the truth. Text this stream to your friends. What if I told you the app is real? Download the Next News Network app. Android users, take the Google Play path. iPhone users, App Store awaits.
Well, here we are, America. Welcome to the Raw Feed. We're watching America's government machinery grind itself against itself while our enemies circle like vultures. I'm Gary Franchi. This is the Raw Feed, where we cut through the noise and deliver the truth that you will not hear anywhere else. January 26th holds a special meaning in our nation's history. On this date, in 1861, Louisiana became the sixth state to secede from the Union, joining what would become the Confederate States of America. That decision sparked years of bloodshed and nearly tore our republic apart. Today, we're witnessing different fractures, but the stakes remain just as high. Let me tell you what's happening right now. While the mainstream media spins fairy tales, our naval forces are moving into position in some of the world's most dangerous waters. And the response from Tehran should terrify every American. The Abraham Lincoln isn't just taking a cruise. This is about sending messages that could either prevent war or guarantee it. Meanwhile, right here at home, we've got a corruption scandal brewing in Minnesota that makes Watergate look like a parking ticket. The numbers are staggering. The connections run deep. And somehow a certain congresswoman who arrived in this country with nothing is now worth more than most Fortune 500 executives. How does that math work exactly? When you start following the money trail, the picture that emerges becomes very clear. And speaking of Minnesota, the situation there has exploded into something nobody saw coming. Federal agents on the ground. There's been violence. Now we're learning about foreign money flowing into protest movements. The FBI has uncovered funding sources that trace back to places you wouldn't expect, and Tom Homan himself is heading there tonight on direct orders from the President of the United States. When the border czar drops everything to personally handle a situation, you know we're dealing with something massive. But here's what gets really interesting. Democrats in Congress are so desperate to protect their narrative that they're willing to shut down the entire federal government again, rather than fund immigration enforcement. Think about that for just a second. They'd rather paralyze essential services again than give ICE the resources to do their job. The vote margins are razor thin, which means every single decision could determine whether our immigration system functions or collapses completely. And if that was not enough, we're witnessing the end of a 78-year relationship that most Americans never even knew existed. Talk about the World Health Organization. Now, that partnership survived world wars, pandemics, and countless international crises. Officially is over. The documents are signed, the withdrawal is complete, and the implications reach far beyond what anyone has anticipated. It's not just about COVID anymore. This is about American sovereignty versus global governance. And tonight we're going to connect dots that others won't even acknowledge exist. We'll show you the satellite imagery that hasn't been released to the public, financial records that paint a disturbing picture of corruption at the highest levels, and audio recordings that reveal exactly who's been pulling the strings behind the scenes. The evidence that we've gathered for you over the past week will change how you view everything happening in Washington and around the world. From naval movements that could trigger World War III to welfare fraud schemes that dwarf anything we've ever seen before. Tonight's show delivers information that powerful people desperately want buried. Well, we're going to expose the foreign actors funding chaos in American cities. We're going to reveal why certain politicians are panicking about routine financial investigations and explain how international health organizations became tools for political control. Every segment tonight builds towards a bigger picture that mainstream media outlets refuse to acknowledge. That's why the Raw Feed exists. To bring you the stories that matter, back with evidence without the filter of corporate interests or political agendas. We're not here to make you feel comfortable. We're here to make you informed. So stay with us, because tonight's revelations will keep you talking for weeks. Let's welcome you to the show. Who we got here? We got Defalon, Bill's Rules, Rumblebot, Cameron Finley, B3 Monroe, Charity Sullivan. Who else is here? Tyson Curie, Dave Hemmert, Ord Og 7, Mary B. Crabtree in the house. Who else is here? Crazy Cat Lady. Sound off, guys. We got Jogger over there on Rumble. What's up, Rumble? Democratic communists are the biggest obstacle for President Trump. Yeah. Dance King, Ron the Don, Paper Renegade. What's up? Mrs. Pothead Kenny in the house as well. Give my regards to the mister, if you will. But we got some news we're going to tackle right now. No time to wait any longer. We are a little bit behind schedule tonight, but we'll make up for it. Let me get this thing queued, Brian. Yes. I don't know yet. You're going to have to put up a timer. Okay. Right now, as you're watching this, the most powerful naval strike force on the planet is sitting within attack range of the Iranian regime. The USS Abraham Lincoln and its guided missile destroyers have entered Middle Eastern waters. U.S. Central Command has now confirmed it. This is not a routine patrol. This is a training. This is not a training exercise. This is the largest American naval presence in the region in months, and the timing is no accident. President Trump says the fleet is bigger than the one he positioned around Venezuela. So, what is Washington preparing for, and why now? Well, the answer might be closer than you think. Now, here's why it matters to every single one of you watching. If this situation escalates, we're not talking about some distant regional skirmish. We're talking about oil prices through the roof overnight. We're talking about your gas hitting levels you haven't seen in years. We're talking about a potential military conflict with a regime that spent decades building proxy armies across the Middle East. The Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, all of them take orders from Tehran. All of them have already attacked American assets, and all of them are watching what happens next. This is not hypothetical anymore. The carrier is there, the strike group is armed, and the administration is clearly positioning for options that go far beyond diplomacy. Your wallet, your safety, and potentially American lives are now on the line. Speaking of protecting your family's future, let me tell you about today's sponsor. If you are over 40 and you're planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you have built may be smaller than you realize. And here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you've already built becomes just as important as growing it. And that is where Noble Gold Investments comes in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolio. So right now might be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure sales, no gimmicks, just clear answers and a strategy built around your goals. Visit nextnewsgold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That is nextnewsgold.com. Now back to this explosive situation in the Persian Gulf. Yes, here's where it gets even more intense. President Trump has now made a statement that changes the calculus entirely. He says the American fleet positioned near Iran is larger than the one we have surrounding Venezuela. Think about that. This is not a token show of force. This is the biggest naval deployment to the region in months. U.S. Central Command released images of sailors aboard the Lincoln performing what they call routine maintenance, but the timing tells a very different story. The carrier is now sailing through the Indian Ocean fully armed with guided missile destroyers, flanking it on all sides. Sean Fuchs posted simply, "Godspeed to Iran." The message from Washington is unmistakable. American power is in position, and the world is watching to see what happens next. This from RT Brazil. Trump says the American fleet positioned near Iran is larger than the one surrounding Venezuela, Pentagon confirming it. The Pentagon confirmed that it maintains deployed the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln along with a strike group in the vicinity of Iran. This is setting the stage. President Trump's massive flex of naval power. Middle East Observer, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, publishes a very close video of the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln with a quote, "There is no benefit to hiding. We know where you are, and our suicide drones can reach you before your planes take off." Now, note this is not recent footage. However, you can see it right here. Surveillance footage shows a drone overhead, American aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. Images of warplanes and helicopters on the deck, other military equipment as well. The video was released on Wednesday. Didn't specify the date of the operation itself. And, of course, a missile going in to shoot it. Precision attacks by the core kamikaze drones. Well, if you ask me, those are like paper clips. You think that those things scare our fleet? I don't think so. The footage highlights Iran's advanced drone technology. Well, good luck with that. CENTCOM commander warns about Iranian drones. CENTCOM has admitted, they state here, the use of drones by Iran has stripped the U.S. of its air superiority. How is that even possible? The first time since the Korean War we are operating without complete air superiority. That's what he acknowledged on Tuesday. Yeah, sounds like that guy needs a couple of his stars removed. But of course, Iran is watching, but they are sending a direct message. Iran Revolutionary Guard commander says regime has finger on the trigger as U.S. warships head towards the Middle East. Here's the headline. Iranian Revolutionary Guard warns fingers on the trigger. I'm not sure how many camels you can launch at one time, but I'm sure it's quite a few. The rhetoric escalating fast from the surveillance to Revolutionary Guards. U.S.'s Abraham Lincoln has arrived in the Middle East near Iran, according to Israeli media. More footage of the USS Abraham Lincoln sailing there. A beautiful vessel, as you can see. And if that was off the coast of my nation, I think I would be a little bit nervous. So Iran can, they can put out all the propaganda videos they want of their drones. The drone technology that they stole from us after one of ours crashed, I should point out. But I'm quite sure that there's enough air superiority on that ship to secure the airspace. So, listen, I'm no general in the military, but for one of our own to make that kind of a statement it's pretty ridiculous. The Lincoln has actually arrived, turning threats into a real proximity. Caroline Levitt, the unstoppable USS Abraham Lincoln, just rolled into the Arabian Sea, fully armed to the teeth and primed to unleash hell. Do you back the U.S., UK, Israel helping Iranians topple Khomeini's regime?
The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group has reached the Arabian Sea and is currently positioned near the Gulf of Oman, which is very close to Iran. From this position, fighter jets can take off from the aircraft carrier and carry out bombing missions against Iran at any time. In addition to this, the United States has delivered advanced air defense systems and other military equipment to all its bases across the Middle East. The Carrier Strike Group has been deployed close to Iran specifically for this reason, to conduct airstrikes if required. A Carrier Strike Group typically consists of 6 to 8 ships. This includes one aircraft carrier, which carries around 70 fighter jets and support aircraft. This is followed by 2 to 3 guided missile destroyers, mainly Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers, which are used for air defense as well as cruise missile attacks. If the United States launches an attack on Iran, Tomahawk cruise missiles would likely be fired from these Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers. The strike group also includes one guided missile cruiser, usually a Ticonderoga-class cruiser. Its primary role is to intercept and neutralize incoming enemy missiles, and it plays a key role in protecting the aircraft carrier. In addition, the Carrier Strike Group includes one nuclear-powered attack submarine, which is also capable of launching Tomahawk cruise missiles. Finally, there is one supply or logistics ship, responsible for providing fuel, weapons, and other essential supplies to the combat ships. This Carrier Strike Group has been deployed by the United States specifically for a potential attack on Iran and is currently awaiting an order from Donald Trump.
Wow. That's how close we are right now, guys, to going to war against Iran. This is the raw firepower we're talking about, a floating fortress loaded for bear in hostile waters. U.S. Central Command says the Abraham Lincoln has arrived in the Middle East to promote regional security and stability. The official statement does contrast sharply with the aggressive reality that is unfolding on the ground. Entering the Middle East, as it enters the Indian Ocean, the Islamic Republic is responding with threats. The Revolutionary Guard has a finger on the trigger.
Fox News alert with an American buildup in the Middle East amid rising tensions with Iran. The USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier strike group has entered CENTCOM waters in the Indian Ocean, and the Islamic Republic is responding with threats. It says its Revolutionary Guard is more ready than ever, finger on the trigger to execute the orders and directives of the commander-in-chief. So General Jack King.
Finger on the trigger. I wonder how much that finger is going to be worth. The Revolutionary Guard's threats getting more specific. They're ready to execute the orders as American steel enters their backyard. Godspeed to Iran, says Sean Fucht. Godspeed to Iran? Wow. Even as tensions peak, we're getting reactions from unexpected voices weighing in on the powder keg. U.S. Central Command. Sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln perform routine maintenance as the aircraft carrier sails in the Indian Ocean. It's currently deployed to the Middle East to promote regional security and stability. There's one of our brave sailors there. The Pentagon's trying to project calm professionalism while the region holds its breath. USS Abraham Lincoln is a 1,092-foot nuclear-powered supercarrier, a floating city of war, carrying 70 combat aircraft powered by 2 nuclear reactors and capable of operating 20 years without refueling. That is insane. Look at that thing. If that thing was in my backyard, I would be freaking out. And that's just one of our boys right there. There's the rest of the fleet. The vessels. Moving right along the specs. It's not just a ship. It is a nuclear-powered city of destruction in Iran's backyard. In Iran, they state here that Islam killed 43,000 Iranians, blinded 10,000, injured 350,000 in 48 hours. USS Abraham Lincoln has arrived to save Iranian protesters from Islamic terrorist Khomeini. Latest from Iran, 43,000 killed, 110 blinded, 350,000 wounded. The stakes have exploded from naval posturing to reports of potential violence and missile threats. A real possibility of an attempted missile launch from Iran towards the American aircraft carrier, which is operating in the region, according to Western intelligence sources. Imminent attacks on the horizon, possibilities as Trump could declare total war. Sputnik Indonesia says Trump calls for major fleet heading to Iran. Iran responds, it will become total war. President Trump stated that America is now preparing for a major naval fleet, including the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, moving into the region. So these are the footsteps of war, my friends. Call it what you want, stabilizing the region or not. The fact is the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group has arrived in the Middle East to promote what the Pentagon calls regional security and stability. But everybody knows what this really is. America's carrier, guns, cruise missiles, combat aircraft now locked and loaded within striking distance of Iranian territory. And President Trump has made clear any threat to American interests will be met with overwhelming force. Now, we haven't seen a show of naval strength like this in years. The carriers are in position, the destroyers are ready, and the United States just sent a message that cannot be ignored. This is the moment where American strength takes center stage. Now, for years, we've talked about Iranian aggression, their proxies, their nuclear ambitions, and now an American carrier strike group sits within their reach. And the message from Washington could not be clearer. The United States is done playing defense. And this matters because what happens in those waters doesn't stay there. It comes home in gas prices, military deployments, and the safety of Americans abroad, the stability of markets. What about sleeper cells? They may be embedded within the United States that came across the border during Joe Biden's administration. So President Trump has positioned American power exactly where it needs to be. The question now is whether our enemies understand what that means. We're watching history unfold in real time. So should the U.S. take preemptive action against Iranian military targets if threats continue? Yes or no? Drop your answer in the chat right now. And if you want to wear your support for American Strength, check out the Next News merch shop, linked in the description. All right. Moving right along, let's check in our super chatters and see if there's anyone needs acknowledgement. Mama Baz, dropping $10. The shutdown threat is grandstanding and ineffective because the current funding lasts to 2026. Go ICE. Chris Benor says, go iced. $20. Wow, look at that. And Poppy Cakes, prayers for ICE agents. Look at that. We're at what, $20, $40 already. Wow, you guys are already out the gate strong. I'm loving it. We're going to move into our next topic now because we have a lot of news to cover tonight, especially with what's going on with Ilhan Omar. Oh, yeah, her party and her days are definitely coming to an end, and I'm glad to watch her demise. But we're not quite there yet. Congresswoman Harriet Hageman says that they're uncovering a layer after layer of fraud in Minnesota with millions in taxpayer dollars being misused. But here's what nobody's talking about. The money trail that leads from welfare recipients straight to overseas wire transfers. And when you follow that money, you discover something that changes everything about this investigation. Now, what's this about? Well, it's not just about Minnesota anymore. We're talking about a potential nationwide network of benefit fraud that could be costing you thousands in taxpayer dollars every single year. Your community could be next. It's probably happening in your community. The investigation is expanded to California, where Dr. Oz is now working with federal prosecutors to expose what they're calling foreign mafia operations taking over the system. Meanwhile, the largest refugee resettlement NGO in the country, funded by your tax dollars, is directly connected to organizations that help people sign up for government benefits. This could be the tip of the iceberg that reaches into every single state. Speaking of things that aren't working the way they should, your liver might be trying to tell you something. So if you're like me, you're getting to that age where your body just feels sluggish and off all the time, then listen up. Recently, I wasn't feeling great, decided to call my friend Dr. Josh for some help. I told him what was going on, and his response shocked me. He said that most people don't realize their liver processes over 500 functions daily. And when it's overloaded, everything suffers, and that's why Up Wellness created Ultra Liver to support your body's natural detox processes and help you feel energized again. Just like we need to clean up the fraud in our government system, sometimes our bodies need help cleaning up too. You can take action now at the link in the description. But here's where this story gets really interesting. The supposed mastermind behind the $250 million fraud scheme, it's not who you think. Federal officials revealed that Amy Bach, a white woman, was actually the one orchestrating the massive scam. So while everyone was focused on Somali immigrants, the real fraud was being run by someone completely different. So this raises some serious questions about who else might be involved. Jim DeBank, another welfare program, another fraud. HUD Secretary Turner, 2024, Biden admin paid 5.8 out of 50 billion questionable payments, 11.6% to 29,000 dead people and 9,400 non-citizens. When is enough enough? Government is not meant to provide, only to protect life and liberty and the rights of citizens. Here we have Housing Secretary Scott Turner confirming the Democrats were using your tax dollars to bankroll housing for illegal immigrants. Over $5 billion in payment errors. Taxpayer money sent to housing for 30,000 dead people.
They insured mortgages. And we eliminated non-permanent residence eligibility for FHA insured mortgages. And we are auditing public housing authorities to ensure taxpayer dollars don't support illegal aliens. American dollars should benefit American citizens and American citizens only. By focusing on our core mission, HUD provided a pathway for home ownership and supported housing affordability for more than 1 million Americans through FHA and Ginnie Mae. We also take stewardship very seriously, so we're cracking down on waste and fraud and abuse. Our Office of the Chief Financial Officer uncovered more than $5 billion in potential payment errors, over $50 billion in total rental assistance for the fiscal year 2024. And that includes money that went to nearly 30,000 dead people. That is ludicrous. It's ridiculous to even think or talk in such a way. It's a violation of our sacred trust to American taxpayers, and it has to end, and it will.
The HUD fraud revelation sets the stage for even bigger scandal that's brewing in Minnesota. We're going to dive deeper now. Trump HUD Secretary Scott Turner, jaw-dropping betrayal by the Democrats, $5 billion in payment errors, over $50 billion in rental assistance in 2024 alone, 30,000 dead people. Government-backed mortgages went to non-citizens. It's only the tip of the iceberg. Here's what's happening in Minnesota. We've been tracking this for weeks now. Dr. Oz, CMS, if you thought the fraud was out of control in Minnesota, wait until you learn about what's happening in California.
I'm here in Los Angeles at the U.S. Attorney's Office. We're talking about fraud. This place has become one of the epicenters for fraud, waste, and abuse in America. $3.5 billion just here in Los Angeles County, we think, around hospice and home health care. Then you add in all the other things like they have in Minnesota, but in California scale, it's huge.
And what we have witnessed is a 7-fold increase in hospice in LA County. 7-fold. That doesn't happen naturally. There are not 7 times more deaths in LA County than there were 5 years ago. These fraudsters, and these do tend to be foreign influences. These are Russian Armenian gangs, mafia, that are leading a lot of these efforts, we believe, have been able to corrupt and work with doctors who are willing to lie, to use that MD degree as a license to kill.
A lot of it's driven by foreigners who came to Los Angeles, very different culture, Russian Armenian groups, and this mafia seems to have taken over the system. They've corrupted doctors, they've normalized fraud so that everyone sort of expects it, but the magnitude of it is so great that we have to take it on aggressively. It's a focus area for CMS, and this administration under President Trump is not going to tolerate taxpayer dollars being stolen because people aren't paying attention anymore. We're focused on this.
Dr. Oz on the case. He's like, if you think what happened in Minnesota, put it at the California scale. The Minnesota connection is about to get very personal. We're talking about specific officials who may have known about the massive fraud schemes. Not only did Amy Bach, the woman behind the $250 million Minnesota Somali fraud scandal, confirm Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison knew about the fraud taking place, but AG Keith Ellison met with Somali fraudsters who are under investigation by the FBI.
And a Fox News alert also in Minnesota. The convicted ringleader of one of the state's biggest fraud schemes is speaking to Fox News from behind bars. Now, she believes that the scam was no surprise to local Democratic leaders, and she's naming names. She spoke to Alexis McAdams. Hi, Alexis.
Hey, Dana. Yeah, so everywhere you look in the state of Minnesota, right, there seems to be another fraud scam. So this one involves Amy Bach. She's a Minnesota woman convicted of fraud for taking taxpayer money that was meant to feed hungry kids. But listen to this. Bach tells me the real issue here is the state of Minnesota, which she says kept giving scammers your taxpayer money even after they were flagged as fraudsters.
I have to believe that the governor's office and Keith Ellison's office were aware of this. They've said they were involved in helping the FBI. They've said they were made aware, but apparently I'm scary, so they couldn't do anything.
So Bach ran this nonprofit called Feeding Our Future. You might have heard of it. It was one of dozens convicted in this $250 million scam. You can see her mugshot there. Prosecutors say this group set up sham restaurants. They pretended they were making these meals. They got paid by the state for those meals, but they just pocketed the cash. Bach, who's looking at 30 years behind bars, tells me the state signed off on those businesses, not her.
It all went through a process. They were all approved. They were all paid by the state, yet all the fingers are being pointed at me.
And it's not just Bach. Whistleblowers told a congressional committee Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison there ignored warnings for years as millions of dollars and millions were stolen on their watch. Congress is investigating a long list of massive fraud schemes in the state. It's hard to keep up. Prosecutors say it's led to at least $9 billion in fraud, Dana, and counting. Congress also asking why the Attorney General there would meet with a group of Somali fraudsters, which were under FBI investigation in 2021. The group can be heard in an audio clip given to us by Bach's lawyer, offering to donate to his campaign if he can help them get their funding flowing again. Ellison denies any wrongdoing here. He slammed Bach in a statement to Fox, calling her a liar, a manipulator, adding now she's on a media tour to deflect her guilt onto others instead of finally taking responsibility for this fraud scheme that she ran. So we reach out to Governor Walz.
Of course, that's how they are going to respond now. It's not just about knowing. We're talking about direct meetings between top officials and people actively under FBI investigation. Back in 2019, Somali Rep Ilhan Omar's household net worth, as you know, was zero. Now it's up to $30 million. The value of her husband's company, Rose Lake Capital, has increased to $25 million. I mean, the only way you can account for that is all that money flowing out of her district right under her nose and being laundered through her husband's firm, allegedly.
Reported in 2019, back in 2019, her household income, her household net worth has gone up from $0 to $30 million, and the value of her husband's company, Rose Lake Capital, has gone from some small amount of money up to $25 million. So apparently, it really does pay to get into politics.
Well, I don't know what she's doing, but I suspect that it's not legal. Who knows? You don't see that kind of change. I mean, she reported on her disclosures around here about a $65,000 net worth just a couple of years back. And now, like you point out, Charlie, she's reporting it's $30 million. Look, Ilhan Omar is a hateful, racist anti-Semite who goes on national TV and plays the victim and goes to the University of Minnesota campus and essentially encourages violence on Jewish students. This needs to be investigated. She was right at the center of the Somali fraudster operation called Feeding Our Future, the $250 million fraud case, largest pandemic fraud case in the country. Those are her people, and they're the ones that donated to her campaign. Right. So,
those are her people. She wrote the bill. Here's what gets more interesting. While the fraud was happening, one particular congresswoman's wealth exploded. The whole crew is getting deported, and Tim Walz is going down.
Ilhan came to Minnesota crying everything's unfair. Then rubber stamped the fraud from school lunches to child care. She's sitting on $30 million, not one honest receipt. Voter fraud all around her, but she swears she doesn't cheat. Minnesota got robbed in the broad daylight. Somalis in Lamborghinis flying past the red light. Billions gone missing and nobody can explain how. But the whole crew's getting deported and Tim Walz is going down. 80 crooks in cuffs were yelling, we're the victims here. Living large on kitty lunches, lobster piled up in the rear. Mansions for the scammers while the little ones got no plate. Then the feds rolled in and crushed them like a beer can at the gate. Minnesota got played like a fiddle in the night. Fraudsters in Ferraris speeding past the refugee plight. Billions hit the road and we're still asking where and how. But the feds got a flight list ready and Tim Walz is boarding now. Old Tim Walz came strutting with his tampons for the boys. He threatened whistleblowers, saying fraud's one trick he enjoys. But when the feds came riding asking, Governor, what's your affair? He cried, why am I deported? I'm American, I swear. Minnesota stood tall when the truth came to light. Those scammers in their mansions couldn't hide from the spotlight. Billions will be clawed back and the party's over now. And the whole gang's a-packing, even Tim Walz and his cow.
Oh, that was a great one right there. Social media reaction fierce, but let's get the hard evidence that's driving the investigation. Deport her and her brother ASAP. Use the money on our debt. Based on the body language of Ilhan Omar, she's worried. James Comer, there's no way referring to how her net worth went from $30 million in a year. Trump wants her investigated right now. Her husband's consultant firm went from $0 to $25 million.
Into your net worth, you and your husband's net worth. They're claiming that it's risen rapidly. What's your response to what they're saying? Do you think they'll find anything in their investigation into your net worth?
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar avoiding questions about her net worth that has risen astronomically during her time in Congress. President Trump wants answers. Writing on Truth Social, quote, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is worth over $30 million. There is no way such wealth could have been accumulated legally while being paid the salary of a politician. She should be investigated for financial and political crimes, and that investigation should start now. Saturday Night America anchor Kayleigh McEnany joins me now. It is amazing. When she started in 2019, she had a negative net worth. Her personal household net worth has gone from negative to $30 million, and her husband's Rose Lake Capital firm, a consulting firm, has gone from just dollars up to $25 million in value.
These aren't random accusations. Federal investigators are asking the same questions about the unexplained wealth. Follow the money. Congress launching an investigation into Representative Ilhan Omar's skyrocketing net worth after reports of a 3,500% increase. The probe comes as her husband's business partner, William Haler, was back in the spotlight after settling multiple lawsuits over claims. Questions swirl over Omar's net worth. Business partner has history of fraud allegations. Well, what do you know? Well, the numbers are staggering. Now we're seeing official congressional oversight get involved. Oversight is looking into Omar's financial disclosures. How did two companies owned by her husband skyrocket in wealth in 1 year? Can anyone turn $1,000 into $30 million in a year? It's ridiculous. We all deserve answers. It's the big question now being investigated by House Oversight James Comer, weighing in with the specific figures that will blow your mind. Ilhan Omar, Julie Donuts writes, installed foreign terrorists. She committed so many crimes. She was installed by voter fraud and was put there to help infiltrate America from within. Just a matter of time, Omar. Let's take a look at this.
Court showdown to unravel why Ilhan Omar's net worth skyrocketed up to $30 million. She, of course, also represents parts of Minneapolis, and so that's why it makes this particular story even that much more unique and pertinent today. Obviously, red flags were raised after the Minnesota Democrat had a modest income last year and now is reporting about $30 million in assets. Representative James Comer is digging in for a long legal battle in order to get to the bottom of all of this. Two companies that Representative Omar's husband has a stake in are of specific concern here after they both posted sudden surges in assets for the couple. Brian, something just doesn't smell right here on its face. In general, question for you, you have a little bit more expertise, but is being a lawmaker on Capitol Hill these days also just a good business move, not a good political move?
Well, they always talk about insider trading and the wealth that's accumulated from people in a government position. Let me tell you where a lot of that insider trading would happen. It wouldn't be from a congressional standpoint, because a lot of times those individuals like Ilhan Omar aren't involved in contracts that the government might pick up or give out to the public sector. Now, people that are on committees, people that are in appropriations or any other high-ranking chairman, those are the guys that know the contracts that are going out for in particular industries. Now, Ilhan Omar, I don't really know much about how she gained her wealth, but I do know we've seen the fraud that has taken place within her community. And without a doubt, I would imagine some of that money has been funneled through, just like we saw, Terrence, on USAID. Same thing. A lot of this money that was going to these NGOs were going back into Democrat pockets.
Of course it was. Of course it was. The NGOs going through the back door into the Democrat pockets. That's what I've been saying. Remember, it's not just about one person. Investigators are connecting the dots between multiple fraud schemes across different states. Here is James Comer's reaction. Growing questions surrounding Omar and her husband, how they built millions in wealth in such a short span. Reports suggest her net worth went from near zero to 6 to 30 million within a year. Oversight is looking into it. Here is Jesse Waters' program.
Republicans turning the heat up on Ilhan Omar. They want to know how she got all that money.
What your response is to the Oversight Committee launching an investigation into your net worth, you and your husband's net worth. They're claiming that it's risen rapidly. What's your response to what they're saying?
House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer. All right, Mr. Comer, you were in banking before politics, right? So she suddenly, in 1 year, after being worth a few $1,000s, is now worth $30 million. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No, and the way the financial disclosure forms are, there's a big variation. But here's what we know: she went from zero to anywhere between $6 and $30 million in a year. Now, why is that relevant? First of all, I don't know many people that go from 0 to 30 without having a legitimate business. Her husband is in some type of finance business, but we don't know what it is. It doesn't appear to be private equity. It doesn't appear to be venture capital. So we just have questions. What exactly is the business that you're involved in? It was kind of like the same questions we asked Hunter Biden that he never could answer. But then, she won't answer any questions. The Ethics Committee is supposed to investigate members. We're not supposed to investigate individual members, but this business is in her husband's name. So we can investigate her husband, and we are going to do that because we're, as you know, in the middle of this Minnesota welfare fraud. And there's been a lot of accusations about a circle of influential Somali Americans that are benefiting from these financial scams in Minnesota. Her name is on the list. Now, she's going to get due process. I don't know if she's guilty, but what I know is she went from 0 to anywhere between $6 and $30 million in a year, and she won't even answer a simple question like you saw there. What did you do?
I mean, it looks very suspicious when you have millions of the Somali cash just flying all over Minneapolis with no scrutiny whatsoever. Wasn't there also a vineyard involved here? The husband's involved in the wine business?
Yeah. There's a thing called money laundering where people have businesses and they deposit, lots of cash. Again, I'm not accusing them of any wrongdoing, but she should answer a simple question. If any member of Congress is asked what business their family's involved in, I've never seen one fail to answer it. That's not a hard question. My husband has a private equity firm and he's done exceptionally well in the last 12 months. She won't answer that question. And everybody in America suspects foul play here. Right. And again, we're going to find out. It's not going to be hard to figure out what business he's in and where the money came from. So that's going to be a central part of our entire Minnesota fraud investigation, because she is the leader in Congress, in the district, in the congressional district where the overwhelming majority of the welfare fraud is taking place. Her name, as well as the Attorney General Keith Ellison's name, have been mentioned as people of interest. I'll put it like that, Jesse. So we're gonna follow through on this, and I think she's gonna have some difficult questions to answer.
All right. Well, if Omar starts painting and selling those pieces of art, then I think we're on to something. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Massive fraud bust on the West Coast.
You know, it all happened in her district. And 90% of the crimes committed by her own community. She's the congresswoman that sits at the top in that district. So I'd like to know how she can walk around that district and be completely blind to all the wealth that is suddenly pouring in. If she's going to social functions or fundraisers, all of a sudden people flush with cash. She has no idea. Oh no, people talk, people whisper. Ilhan Omar knows everything. Now, I don't know if she could be hauled before the committee. Maybe she should. I'm not sure if it works that way. If a congressperson can be hauled in front of a committee for these crimes that are taking place in Minnesota, there's got to be, I'm sure there's a mechanism for handling it with congresspeople. The pattern is becoming clear. This is a coordinated system of benefit fraud that spans multiple programs. We have this. Just remember, this goes hand in hand in DeKalb County School District. They go after both you, and you solve many money laundering problems. DeKalb has a foundation collecting donations, but the mailbox is at a UPS store. A UPS store. Minnesota was just beginning. Dr. Oz and federal prosecutors are uncovering even bigger operation in California. Medicaid fraud, every state taxpayer funds. Refugees, Medicare, Medicaid, they get the benefits, daycare benefits. Now we have businesses collecting millions. And like this, let's see, draft talks about scam daycare benefits. What is this, Tor said? I'm not sure what the Tor said is, but here's Rand Paul. This must stop now. My bill will audit all welfare programs and include clawbacks from states allowing this fraud. But first, everyone needs to know. This week, the Senate will vote to continue over $5 billion for refugee welfare. I will try to force an amendment. The scope is national organized groups systematically exploiting refugee resettlement programs for massive profits. Wall Street Apes writes, the largest refugee resettlement NGO in the country is taxpayer funded and is giving money to the Somali American Community Center. The Somali American Community Center building is filled with businesses that sign up refugees for government benefits.
Congress is trying to give $5 billion of your money for refugee resettlement programs, and then it ends up in places like
This is the International Rescue Committee, the largest refugee NGO in the country. They get the government funds and subcontract the work out to places like
This is the Somali American Community Center. It receives grants from the IRC in order to help refugees resettle in America.
But when we went in, we found this.
An almost completely abandoned retail space which hasn't filed taxes in almost 10 years.
Where almost every business is focused on getting refugees on taxpayer-funded welfare programs.
And that is how the largest refugee city in the country is funded.
And how over 87% of Somali immigrants end up on taxpayer-funded public assistance.
We spent 3 days in Little Somalia in Atlanta, Georgia.
The largest refugee center in the entire country. And this is what we found.
Oh, man. Those Somalis got a good network going, don't they? It goes beyond individual cases. We're looking at what appears to be organized crime networks operating with taxpayer funding. Dr. Oz has teamed up with the U.S. Attorney SL to investigate the fraud in California. Driven by foreigners, Russians, and Armenians, the mafia system has taken over the system. The evidence is mounting from multiple sources. Now congressional leaders are demanding accountability for the abuse. This is the face of a person who federal officials say was behind the organization bilking U.S. taxpayer dollars. You know, the Somali immigrant scammers. This is the face of the person behind all this talk. Let's check this out.
They found the leader of the Somali scammers, and you won't believe this. The person who defrauded the United States government out of $250 million. mastermind the whole scheme, right? Wait for this, right? This is the leader of the Somali scammers. Fork found in fucking kitchen. Understand, this is Amy Bach. She's a white woman. Just so we passed that, right? She's a white woman. This is Amy Bach, who made false claims to the United States government in order to gain $250 million, with claims saying that she was going to feed hungry children. So the leader of the Somali scammers is not even Somalian. Now, as you know, in the United States of America, the largest domestic terrorist group in America is not immigrants, it's white people.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for that. Is that where you're going to end up with that? No. The point here is that you have a white woman at the top. Who else knows in that circle, in her community? That's why the fingers are pointing at walls. Here's Representative Harriet Hageman. We're uncovering layer after layer of fraud in Minnesota. Millions in taxpayer dollars being misused, officials ignoring it, while hardworking Americans pay the price.
You know, we could say that there were many red flags. These weren't red flags. These were neon flashing signs. These were fireworks. There were so many signs about the fact that this kind of fraud was going on, especially when you take into consideration what was just reported about the millions of dollars being flown out of Minnesota, out of the Minneapolis Airport to Somalia. Over 80% of the Somalia households receive some form of public assistance. Many of them are on welfare. So your first question is, if they're on welfare, how are they getting millions of dollars to send back to the homeland? Number one. Number two, if they're on welfare, why do they need childcare? They're not working outside of the home. Why would there be this number of Somalia childcare centers? I mean, you can go step by step by step as you peel this onion, and you realize that there was layer after layer after layer after layer of fraud. And everybody in the state of Minnesota that was responsible for actually ensuring that this money was appropriately spent basically said, well, I don't know. It never occurred to me that there could be fraud here. You think about it and you just know that the level of corruption here is probably one of the largest frauds that has ever been perpetrated against the American taxpayer and the state taxpayers in Minnesota.
So she put it perfectly. These were not red flags. They were fireworks. Over 80% of Somali households receive public assistance, yet millions of dollars are being flown from Minneapolis airports to Somalia. If they were on welfare, where's the money coming from? And why are there so many child care centers if people aren't working? The math just simply does not add up. The Minnesota fraud investigation is now exposing a web of corruption that reaches far beyond what anyone initially imagined. From welfare fraud overseas, money transfers from NGOs facilitating benefit signups to mastermind schemes worth hundreds of millions, the story reveals how easy it is to game the system when nobody's watching. The question isn't whether the fraud is happening in other states. The question is how long it's been happening and how deeply it really goes. Do you think your state could be next? And hey, while you're thinking about that, check out the Next News merch shop. All right, moving right along here. That's why they won't show. I bet Whoopi and Joy saying it's a lie. Of course they are. Nothing to see here, right? Newsom say is worse. Nothing to see here. Yeah. This is really getting crazy now. Okay, Brian, I'm ready to rock when you are. Let me load up my next page. We'll get this thing squared up for you. Oh, hang on. Did I go the wrong way? I am going the wrong way. Whoops. Hang on, Brian. I'm almost there. Okay. I'm ready to go. An armed protester is dead in Minnesota. Tom Homan's flying in tonight, and the FBI just cracked open encrypted signal chats coordinating attacks on ICE agents. But here's what they found that changes everything. Foreign money flowing into what Trump calls a $20 billion welfare fraud scheme. The rabbit hole goes deeper than anyone imagined. Now, this isn't just about immigration enforcement anymore. We're talking about organized domestic terrorism with international funding, coordinated through encrypted channels that the feds are now monitoring in real time. So your tax dollars weren't just being stolen, they were being weaponized against the very agents trying to enforce our laws. Meanwhile, students in Georgia are walking out of failing schools to protest ICE while their reading scores sit at 20%. The network spans multiple states, uses military-grade encryption, and according to Trump's post, connects directly to a congresswoman who arrived from Somalia with nothing and now is worth $44 million. Every American city could be next. And speaking of never surrendering, you know what caught my eye this week? Check this out. It's these never surrender gold sneakers from MAGA offers. You see something and instantly know it's going to turn heads right there. That's exactly what happened here. These are not subtle. They're not supposed to be. Gold finish, red, white, and blue details, never surrender right on the shoe. You put these on and you're making a statement about standing firm when everyone else folds. While protesters coordinate attacks through signal chats, real Americans are stepping up in gold. Now, these shoes represent everything we're fighting for. No backing down, no compromise, pure American defiance. So when the establishment tries to break your spirit, you lace up and keep moving forward, because sometimes you need to walk the walk, literally. Check out the link. Grab a pair for yourself at themagaoffers.com/NNN. But here's the twist that has everyone scrambling. Independent journalist Cam Higbee exposed the original Signal network, forcing them to completely wipe their comms. The feds thought they'd won. Wrong. FBI Director Kash Patel just confirmed the terrorists have already relaunched new encrypted channels and they're operating at half capacity but growing fast. The investigation is active, but they're always one step behind the technology. Here's Benny Johnson, an ICE agent seen bleeding while defending a hotel from violent left-wing mob. No sign of local law enforcement. Why? Because Tim Walz and Jacob Frey ordered them to stand down. This is what agents are facing on the ground. Invoke the Insurrection Act. I couldn't agree more.
You got it?
Any other form of law enforcement.
It's like this officer's bleeding.
You know you shot some dude with a beanbag at point blank range for banging a pan? Is that a crime now?
No, it's not the time. Honest to God, no, it's not the time. You're not press, sir. You understand? Are you press? Are you press?
Is only press allowed to be on the street?
Are you press?
I'm documenting.
Then back up. Back up now. Back up.
Not sure what happened before this, but clearly these guys are in the middle of hell. The bleeding agent story sets up the bigger question: how are local police responding to the chaos? Minneapolis police chief, even if there is an investigation that ultimately proves that at the time of the shooting it was justified, I don't think even that matters at this point because there's so much outrage.
Greater issue is, even if there is an investigation that ultimately proves that at the time of the shooting it was legally justified, I don't think that even matters at this point, because there is so much outrage and concern around what is happening in the city.
And you guys are standing down. You guys are to blame for it. The police chief's comments lead us to even more explosive revelation about who's really behind the violence. Kash Patel says the FBI has made progress discovering the funding sources behind the Minnesota insurrectionists.
And that's the distinction. You want to go out there and peacefully protest, have at it. You want to go out there and use your Second Amendment right to bear arms, okay, no problem. But look at the situation in Minnesota. This is not something that just happened overnight. They've been rioting recklessly, destroying federal vehicles, ramming federal agents, literally hitting them, striking them, and as you just highlighted, using coordinated attacks to threaten their families. None of that is lawful, and none of that will be tolerated. You do not get to touch law enforcement. And we've got also investigations ongoing into the funding of this. We've made actual substantial progress. I just can't publicize it yet, but we've actually found groups and individuals responsible for funding it because it's not happening organically.
This is incredible to hear. And
of course it's not happening organically. It's all planned. They manufactured the outrage. They just got their next martyr. Kash Patel's bombshell about foreign funding connects directly to what officials are saying about the crime scene itself. Here is the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche.
It's disgusting that the Attorney General at a time like this will come out with that disgusting rhetoric. As everybody knows, as the governor himself knows, as the Attorney General knows, as the mayor knows, after the incident happened, law enforcement, local law enforcement decided to come on the scene, and they lost the crime scene. Protesters and rioters overtook that crime scene. It was not federal law enforcement. It was not Border Patrol agents that did not preserve the crime scene. That is just blatantly false. And so it would do everybody in this country a lot better if honesty were spoken from the leadership in Minnesota. But we're going to continue to do what we do every day, which is the right thing, and investigate, and we'll go from there.
The problem is this is a grand distraction from the main story. The main story is the fraud that has now been uncovered. And this distraction is right on cue. As Kash Patel said, the money is not, it's not just coming in organically. This is a structured distraction campaign that is now costing people's lives. The Deputy Attorney General's scene preservation comments transition to the federal response that's underway. Trump is sending the border czar to Minneapolis.
Morning, just breaking in the last 30 minutes or so, Dana and Bill, the president is sending border czar Tom Homan to Minnesota now. He just announced it on Truth Social. He said, I'm sending Tom Homan to Minnesota tonight. He has not been involved in that area, but knows and likes many of the people there. Tom is tough but fair and will report directly to me. He goes on to talk about how the administration is also going to be digging into the fraud in Minnesota. The president so far has declined to say whether CBP acted appropriately in this shooting, telling the Wall Street Journal, quote, we're reviewing everything, and we'll come out with a determination, adding that he doesn't like any shooting, but he also doesn't like it when somebody brings a loaded gun into a protest. The Tom Homan move is very interesting, Dana, because it comes as Bill Malugin reports more than half a dozen federal law enforcement sources have now expressed to him some pretty big internal frustration and anger with the messaging that's coming out of DHS. In this case, leaders going on TV, putting out statements claiming that Alex Peretti was intending to conduct a, quote, massacre of federal agents. Now, while these sources tell Bill that they support the president's deportation agenda, they don't like the narratives that are being pushed by top officials. Here is Todd Blanche.
Look, I don't think anybody thinks that they were comparing what happened on Saturday to the legal definition of domestic terror. What we saw was a very violent altercation, and I am not going to prejudge the fact. So I'm not describing it as anything except for a tragedy, but I do not think it is fair. It is not fair for the narrative to be around something DHS said.
Trump sending Homan shows the escalation. Wait to see how the organized protests really are. Fox confirms the highly organized left-wing operation going on in Minnesota Comms, they have radios, logistics, they have supply lines and food drops, organization and leadership. They have a command structure and move like a unit and not a mob.
To you?
Aisha, it definitely does feel organized to me, and I think you can tell these people are well connected. They are in communication with each other, and they are giving them instructions. This happened all so quickly. People knew where to go, and they are taking commands. This is an organized movement here. There's communication, there's food, there's notices, there's notifications. They got out here in a hurry, and they outnumber this police force probably by about 10 to 1 at this point.
It's incredible. Let's go back to Garrett Tenney. Garrett.
Moving like an organized militia. The highly organized Operation Revelation explains why officials are calling this something more serious than protests. Here's Secretary Noem.
I do want to address the tragic situation that we saw in Minneapolis today that unfolded on the streets. It occurred with DHS law enforcement as they carried out their lawful duties to keep Americans safe in the threat of criminal illegal aliens in this country. At 9:05 a.m. Central Time, the Department of Homeland Security law enforcement officials and officers were conducting targeted operations in Minneapolis against an illegal alien whose criminal history included domestic assault with intentionally inflicting bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement. About hundreds of protesters then showed up at the scene. They began to obstruct and to assault law enforcement officers. We saw objects being thrown at them, including ice and other objects, and a rampant assault began, and even an HSI officer agent's finger was bitten off. Crowd control measures were deployed to bring safety to the public and to law enforcement at the scene. And once again, I want to remind everybody that this situation and this tragedy did not have to happen.
No, but it did, because the leaders there are encouraging it. Her assessment of the intentional violence against law enforcement sets up for even stronger criticism of local leadership. Here she goes into the Minnesota governor and mayor.
We also recognize that the Minnesota governor and the Minneapolis mayor need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. They need to evaluate their rhetoric, their conversations, and their encouragement of such violence against our citizens and our law enforcement officers. I'll remind you that Governor Walz today in his press conference said that our officers were not even law enforcement, which is a lie. He's called them the Gestapo. He's encouraged residents and citizens and violent rioters to resist. He's doxed their identities, putting themselves and their families' lives in jeopardy. He's refused to turn over murderers to federal law enforcement officers. He's protected illegal criminals and protected them from being brought to justice, and even overseen a historic, unprecedented theft of American taxpayer dollars. Tens of billions of dollars were stolen under his watch, and he allowed it to happen, and in some instances may have even facilitated it. In other cities and states across the country, we don't see this happen. Local, state, and officials work with us to make sure that we're making their streets safer. I'll point to the city of Memphis, which is where there is a Democrat mayor in place. He worked with us and our federal law enforcement officers, and we saw murder rates drop by 50% because of that partnership. We've seen historic lows in the criminal acts that have happened in that city. We've had the same amount of law enforcement officers there, but a very different result because of the leadership in place. Last week, ICE did over 2,000 different operations, and we saw people be brought to justice and the American people made safer because of that work. We don't have this problem in Texas or in Florida, because those individuals in those states work with us and they make sure that they keep peace and calm while they bring criminals to justice. In Minneapolis, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey, they instead choose violence. They instead choose to encourage the destruction of their city and the crime against their people. It appears that they want this lawlessness to continue. It appears that they want chaos to distract from the theft and the fraud and the corruption of their city. I'll remind you, this city has been corrupt for years with what we've seen with people that have been stealing taxpayer money, all under the leadership of Governor Walz and Mayor Frey. I'm asking for all the authorities in Minneapolis and the leaders to work with us. And there are two things that we have repeatedly asked the governor and the mayor to do. Number one, all we want them to do is that when they are going to release a dangerous criminal from their jails, turn them over to us so we can get them out of this country as soon as possible. Since we have been back in the White House with President Trump's leadership, they have released over 490 criminals onto their streets rather than allow us to get them out of the country to keep families safe. The second thing that we have asked the governor and the mayor to do is to help us keep people safe. Just give us backup on the streets while we do our targeted operations to get illegal criminals out of our country, and then we wouldn't have to be there facing these types of situations that we face with violent rioters who are impacting and attacking our law enforcement officers. That's all. Those are the two requests that we've asked of them. We've asked them to help us do that so that we can continue to see success in Minneapolis like we see in so many other cities and communities across the country. But they have refused because they want us talking about attacking law enforcement officers instead of the fraud and the theft that they facilitated in Minnesota.
That's what I've been saying. That's exactly the plan. Her criticism of leaders leads to her most damning assessment of the shooter's clear intent.
This individual impeded the law enforcement officers and attacked them. State the facts as they unfolded on the street today. We were doing a targeted operation against an illegal criminal, and this individual came with a weapon and dozens of rounds of ammunition and attacked them. And these agents took action to defend their lives and to defend the lives of the people around them and acted according to their training. And we will continue to let this process go forward and not allow people like Governor Walz and Mayor Frey to lie about what actually unfolded on that street. Now they have deemed this situation an unlawful assembly, and these leaders aren't even cleaning up the situation that they have as far as the violent riots that we see unfolding in Minneapolis right now. They need to be strong, take action, protect their citizens, and partner with us to go after these criminals that perpetuate violence and to keep our law enforcement officers safe. Let's all be grateful for people who take an oath every day and they go out to enforce the laws. That is their job, is to enforce the laws and to make sure that there is consequences for breaking the law in this country and that it applies equally to everybody. That is what they do. They do it every day. They do thousands of operations every single week, and they do it with excellence. Don't let political corrupt leaders who are just trying to cover up their theft of American taxpayer dollars try to distract you from the facts of the situation.
Yep. Well done. Her evidence about the armed attackers' preparation contrasts sharply with the administration's immigration priorities. Caroline Levitt, we don't need federal law enforcement officers out of Minnesota. We need dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens out of Minnesota. The Democrats have their own priorities completely upside down. They will not keep the American people safe. The press secretary's priorities statement connects to how federal officials are drawing constitutional lines about protest rights. CMDRO at large, California. Who's that?
I believe that all citizens of the United States have those First and Fourth Amendment rights as long as they do so peacefully and don't delay, obstruct, or assault anyone in doing that. And that's the issue here, because he was not peacefully doing anything.
Not peacefully doing anything. Yeah, who brings a gun like that? Fully loaded. Here's the FBI Director Kash Patel on the arrest of 6 of the 10 most wanted fugitives in 1 year of Trump's administration.
Yeah, thanks to President Trump's amazing leadership and protection of law enforcement, and thanks to our great partners at the Department of Justice, this year, the Attorney General and us, we have arrested in 2025, we arrested and captured 4 top 10 of the FBI's most wanted. 4. And to put that in perspective, in the Biden administration, they had captured 4 in 4 years. These are the worst of the worst, the gangbangers, the murderers, the drug dealers. Flipping to 2026, in just the last week and a half, Maria, we have seized, I was just down in Mexico this past week, we have apprehended 2 more of the FBI's most wanted fugitives, including Ryan Wedding, who is a Canadian Olympic snowboarder turned into the modern-day El Chapo. And after a year-long campaign and manhunt to go and get this guy, we went down there to Mexico to advance our investigation. Huge thanks to President Trump again and the Department of Justice and the Mexican government and our ambassador Ron Johnson down there. This type of work takes a full-on interagency assault. It takes relentless pursuit to make sure that these individuals never harm Americans again. And while we were down there, we also apprehended another top 10 most wanted fugitive, Alejandro Castillo, who brutally murdered a 22-year-old first-generation American over a decade ago in North Carolina. Collectively, these 6 of the top 10 have been on the run for 50 years, half a century. And under President Trump's leadership, they have nowhere to run. That is just amazing interagency law enforcement, and the FBI is leading that charge, and we're happy to bring them home.
The fugitive arrests show federal law enforcement success, but let's see what they're finding about the current threats.
You do not get to attack law enforcement officials in this country without any repercussions. You do not get to do that in Minnesota, LA, or anywhere else. And the interagency is leading the charge out there. We've already arrested with the interagency those that violated the FACE Act and impeded a peaceful prayer in church. We've already just last night arrested 4 more individuals involved in the damage of government property that we saw the videos of online. We've arrested other individuals who've made threats to law enforcement online. So we are not messing around. It doesn't have to be in person. If you threaten law enforcement officials or civilians, we are going to come find you.
We're going to find you. FBI's threat investigation connects to the thousands of criminals ICE has been targeting in Minnesota, or Minneapolis specifically. Here's Steve Scalise.
Well, but remember, these agents have also arrested thousands of violent criminals in Minneapolis. That's one of the reasons that crime is down. And we're seeing that across the country. ICE, and look, again, anytime something bad happens, we all lament that. I wish it didn't happen. But the rhetoric does need to be toned down. But we also need to remember, why is ICE doing this in cities? They're enforcing federal law, Margaret. The law says you can't be here illegally, and if you're committing violent crimes, the president made it clear, in fact, he was elected, President Trump was elected, to get rid of criminals in our communities. 416,000 criminals have been arrested by ICE just in the last year. That has helped make our communities safer.
President Trump's leadership making America safe again. That was one of the campaign mottos, wasn't it? The numbers about criminal arrests explain why ICE needs protection, but local police aren't providing it. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara avoids the question when asked if police have been ordered not to protect ICE. Oh, my God.
Were you ever ordered to stand down? Have police been told not to protect ICE?
It is deeply disappointing to have anyone question and disparage the hard work of the men and women of the Minneapolis Police Department. There are 600 police officers that are left here after the destruction of the city in 2020, and they are doing an incredible job. About a dozen of our cops have been injured responding to a lot of the chaos that has resulted on the streets. Our officers respond every time there's a threat to someone's life, to public safety, or destruction in the city. And it doesn't matter whether it's because ICE is there or someone from the community is there. We are doing everything that we can to manage this chaos, but there's only 600 cops here, and there's thousands of immigration agents here.
Right.
There should be 10,000. The police protection question leads to the most shocking example of violence against the officers. An officer had their finger bitten clean off by an agitator yesterday.
One officer had his finger bitten clean off by an agitator yesterday. There are some pretty troubling photos of that online if anybody wants to look. Have you heard from any of the Democratic leadership in Minnesota about that? Tim Walz, Jacob Frey?
No, they haven't expressed any concern for injuries to our officers, and that's been going on for weeks. These are not just agitators anymore, they're violent protests. In fact, the state and the city of Minneapolis abandoned this area in downtown Minneapolis because they couldn't control the situation by the amount of people that have come in just trying to disrupt and impede law enforcement operations. And, you know, frankly, this didn't turn violent until we uncovered the fraud in Minneapolis. We were there. ICE and CBP have been there and operating for years in Minneapolis. We saw the violence start to happen when the fraud became uncovered of the billions.
Did you hear what she said? The violence didn't happen until the fraud was uncovered. This is all on cue. It's a theatrical production. It's being funded from the highest levels, and that's the whole point of this operation.
That was stolen from American taxpayers under the leadership of Governor Walz and Mayor Frey.
Cue the protesters. On January 24th, U.S. Immigration and Customs writes, our officers were swarmed and attacked by these violent agitators. The courageous men and women of ICE were subjected to the following attacks: hurling and kicking dangerous objects, violent physical assaults, including biting and tackling. Look at these weirdos. Every single one of them. We don't have to live this way. That's right, Jack. Here's more from Secretary Noem.
Part of this investigation, we'll be hearing from those agents and officers and people on the ground. But we do know that he came to that scene and impeded a law enforcement operation, which is against federal law. It's a felony. When he did that, interacting with those agents, when they tried to get him to disengage, he became aggressive and resisted them throughout that process. These officers used their training, followed their protocols, and were in fear of their lives and the people around them. And that's how this tragedy unfolded, and we hope we never see it again. It grieves me to think about what his family is going through, but it also grieves me what's happening to these law enforcement officers every day out on the streets with the violence that they face.
Was it worth it, bro? Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Now you're dead. But the blood is on Frey's hands, Walz's hands, Ilhan Omar's hands, because they're encouraging this behavior. Noem's balanced perspective on tragedy sets up the most disturbing footage from the scene. Chilling footage shows badly injured federal officer guarding damaged entrance to Minneapolis hotel during the mob siege. Where's the local PD? The officer asked the reporters.
Is everyone press?
We're overnight. We're all members of the press. We're all press here. Okay. This officer appears to be bleeding from the mouth. Oh my God. Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Says he's all right. He's all right.
Where's the local PD? That's my question for the press.
Okay. This officer.
Where is the local PD?
What's your message to the local PD, sir?
No.
Okay.
Well, the mayor.
Very chaotic.
Sir, while you're getting messages, what would your message to the protesters that want you out be?
An impromptu press conference with them.
As long as you're getting
No
comment,
comment.
do you have any comment
Please
for the
get
people that want you out?
back up. Please give me some room. It's
Where is the local PD? Where's the local PD? That shows the escalation. Here's a reporter from the Daily Caller, St. Paul. Says ICE protesters are trying to break into the hotel where ICE agents are staying to get them. He says protesters barricaded both roads so no one could help them.
You're reporting for the Daily Caller. I'm at this Home 2 Suites by the Hilton at St. Paul, and a huge group of protesters are trying to enter that hotel. They believe ICE agents are staying there. Check out this scene here. They kind of barricaded the roads. I don't see any local law enforcement on the scene, but take a look at this. States. We'll see if authorities move in to make arrests, but as of right now, we don't see any. Yeah, both roads right here are barricaded. And they're already, I see some graffiti on the windows. Some windows are actually smashed. Take a look at this. So stay tuned for updates here from St. Paul.
An ICE veteran just called out what it is, a violent nationwide insurrection.
I've worked in Minnesota for the past 20 years, right? And yesterday was another unfortunate incident. You know, no officer wakes up in the morning and hopes to have to use any type of force, let alone deadly force. And now this happened. And again, this happened because of kind of what we're seeing around here with a lot of these agitators, these vigilantes kind of surrounding the officers on the street. It's like nothing I've ever seen before working here in the past 20 years.
Nothing I've ever seen before in 20 years. That's the length they will go to cover up the fraud. This declaration connects to other agents demanding military intervention. 2 CBP agents, 1 injured, didn't get any help from Minneapolis police because their boss is playing politics. Nobody in the White House, including POTUS, wants to see American people killed in the streets. Here's the press secretary.
I would also like to address the chaotic scenes in Minnesota over the weekend. Nobody in the White House, including President Trump, wants to see people getting hurt or killed in America's streets. This includes Renee Good, Alex Preddy, the brave men and women of federal law enforcement, and the many Americans who have been victimized at the hands of illegal alien criminals. Saturday's shooting remains under active investigation by Homeland Security Investigations and the FBI. The Customs and Border Protection is also conducting their own internal review. As President Trump said yesterday, the administration is reviewing everything with respect to the shooting, and we will let that investigation play out. But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Frey and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers who are risking their lives daily to remove the worst criminal illegal aliens from our streets: murderers, rapists, pedophiles, human traffickers, and gang members. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have shamefully blocked local and state police from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals. They have also used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators to stalk, record, confront, and obstruct federal officers who are just trying to lawfully perform their duties, which has created dangerous situations threatening both these officers and the general public and Minnesotans alike. This is precisely what unfolded in Minneapolis on Saturday morning. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. This used to be a universally accepted position in the United States. Amid the hysteria, we must remember how we got here to this moment today and what this Democrat opposition is about. Former President Joe Biden and the Democrats opened America's borders for 4 years, inviting tens of millions of illegal aliens from all over the world to flood into our country. Among them, violent criminals who terrorized American communities and have inflicted devastating, permanent pain and harm on law-abiding Americans and their families. Yet we never saw outrage from Democrats or their allies in the liberal media over these horrifying crimes against U.S. citizens. The pain of American angel families was ignored and dismissed because it undermined the Democrat narrative. Innocent Americans like Jocelyn Nungray, Laken Riley, and Rachel Morin are just a few of the many victims savagely murdered by illegal alien criminals. Earlier this month, an illegal alien from Mexico with a long criminal history who came into our country under Joe Biden's administration threw a baseball-sized stone at a school bus carrying children in New Jersey and fractured the skull of an 8-year-old innocent child. President Trump promised accountability to these American families by securing the border, deporting every illegal alien who has committed crimes, especially and most importantly, violent crimes. Nearly 80 million Americans voted for him to deliver on that very promise, and he is. As the duly elected president, the president is fulfilling the will of the people by arresting and removing these threats from our country in cities from Los Angeles to New York and, yes, Minneapolis. Yet Democrat leaders in Minnesota with sanctuary city policies have actively defied federal immigration law and the will of the people. And as a result of that defiance, 2 Minnesotans have now tragically lost their lives on the streets of Tim Walz's state. It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today.
Not if it keeps getting funded. The White House response to the tragedy leads to the broader message about protecting all American lives. Here's more from the press secretary earlier today. Our cameras were there.
There has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media in picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories. And as I've said, President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump, and that's why the lives of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray continue to matter to him and be an utmost priority to him to this very day. And it's unfortunate that we did not see the same type of sensationalist media coverage over the tragic deaths of those innocent American women and girls across the country as we are in the wake of this tragedy that took place on Saturday.
No, they don't fit the narrative. It's simple, you know. The administration's equal protection message transitions to the criticism of the dangerous Democrat rhetoric. Here's more from the secretary today.
Such dangerous rhetoric, as I pointed out, is exactly what has brought us to this position today, where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. Again, these brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. I would encourage everyone in this room, and I would encourage the Arizona Attorney General to look at the video of an ICE agent in Minneapolis. He was approached by left-wing agitators who were honking their horns and were screaming slurs at him. And he rolled down his window and he said, "What are you doing? I am out here trying to catch a child predator, somebody who has convicted crimes against an innocent child, and you are trying to obstruct me from doing my job." This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country.
The rhetoric leads to personnel question about who's handling the crisis. Here is the press secretary discussing Secretary Noem.
Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country. Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So Borders Czar Homan is in a unique position to drop everything and go to Minnesota to continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials. And I know that he's catching a plane in just a few hours to do just that at the request of the president.
Buckle up. Reinforcements are on their way. The Homan deployment explanation connects to the administration's broader success with cooperative cities.
I would just add on this level of cooperation a few statistics that I think are very important. 7 of the top 10 safest cities in the United States cooperate with ICE. And we've seen historic turnaround in safety in cities that have chosen to cooperate with ICE, that are not just led by Republicans, but also look right here in Washington, D.C. We had a great level of cooperation with Mayor Bowser and the local government, and we have been able to remove thousands of illegal aliens from the District of Columbia, where you all live, so you can thank President Trump for that. The murder rate in Washington, D.C. has plummeted as a result. There were no riots, there were no protests, nobody nobody was tragically killed as a result of that level of cooperation between federal and local authorities. And again, that's all the president is asking for in Minnesota. It's totally common sense.
Isn't that interesting? Here she is talking about the president and the Second Amendment rights.
The president supports the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding American citizens. Absolutely. There has been no greater supporter or defender of the right to bear arms than President Donald J. Trump. So while Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms, Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede lawful immigration enforcement operations. And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying a weapon, when you are bearing arms, and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
Yep, you shouldn't have brought that gun, buddy. And now we have this, the press secretary discussing Tom Homan directly.
Mr. Homan is the point person for cooperating with state and local authorities and corresponding with them, again, to achieve this level of cooperation to subdue the chaos on the streets of Minneapolis. And I would just point out that Mr. Homan is someone who has been lauded for many, many decades for his experience working in law enforcement. In fact, this is a Washington Post headline from 9 years ago, 2016. Meet the man the White House has honored for deporting illegal immigrants. And I would remind everyone in this room that it was former President Barack Hussein Obama who awarded a medal to Mr. Homan. So he's obviously very qualified. He has the full trust and faith of the president. He will continue to have these meetings in the hopes that ICE and local law enforcement can cooperate and work together to have successful immigration enforcement, as we've seen in almost every other state across the country.
Homan got an award from Obama. Oh, that's classic. The Obama medal reference for Homan connects to the shocking evidence of state and foreign involvement now. DC Drano with Steve Bannon. The writers in Minneapolis have access to license plate databases. This proves state involvement. Their signal chats have elected leaders and exposed money trails from Canada. This proves foreign involvement. They attack ICE and threaten journalists.
This is domestic terrorism, and it's operating as a low-intensity insurgency. We've been watching this and just kind of astounded how there's always, these people blowing the whistles wherever ICE is, and they have different undercover vehicles. They try and keep a low profile, and for some reason they keep getting spotted. But James O'Keefe was just up there in Minneapolis and had his life directly threatened. He got a text from a number said, "We know you're in X car with this license plate from Florida. If you don't leave within an hour, you're dead." That is insane. That is not only terrorism, but it's showcasing that they have access to license plate identification. They have access to people's cell phones. They have operatives within the police departments or the state government that are providing them with this private secure data. And that shows that this is a top-down insurgency operation. And we saw yesterday, it was all over X, some great accounts, 0 Hour and Cam Higbee showed the signal chats, right? And so you've got 1,000 people in these chats every day. They have organized emojis to mean certain symbols. They have protocols, they have training manuals, and then they also have financing documents. And there's a great tweet from, I think, Data Republican showing that there's actually foreign funding from Canada, a guy named Unchuffed, his organization in Canada. So this has foreign funding. This has state level involvement. The lieutenant governor was found in there. Multiple state representatives and city councilors were found in those signal chats. That is sedition, Steve. If this stuff is leading to violence, to people's deaths, that's insurrection, that's sedition, that's felony murder, that's conspiracy. There is a whole host of charges that members of Tim Walz's staff and campaign staff are involved with. And it is no surprise that they're doing this once their fraud machine was found. Yep. It's a pure diversion play. Yep. And President Trump has to stay on the offense and take this down, because if he doesn't, and I think he will, but if he doesn't, it will spread to other cities.
The foreign involvement evidence leads to the FBI director's confirmation of active investigations. We're investigating as soon as Higbee put the post out.
Okay, so this is breaking news. So you and the FBI and perhaps now an open investigation into these.
Worried. It's that simple. If you didn't break the law, continue.
Now that they have been exposed.
Well, they should be. If they broke the law, you should be worried. It's that simple. If you didn't break the law, there's really nothing to worry about on that front. And so, we're going to continue, as I've said from day one, we will protect law enforcement. We will make sure they have the security and safety to do their jobs. We will also ensure that civilians have the ultimate protection of the First and Second Amendment. But it is my job to adjudicate the difference when there is a breaking of federal statute or state law in the furtherance of a crime or violence against law enforcement officers. And that's when we step in.
And they are. Kash Patel's investigation confirms the administration's direct negotiation with Minnesota leadership. Press secretary details President Trump's call with Tim Walz.
That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number one, Governor Walz, Mayor Frey, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number two, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police. And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions. Additionally, President Trump is calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation ending sanctuary cities once and for all. American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding citizens only, not for dangerous illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and do not belong here. We hope Governor Walz will do the right thing and continue to work with President Trump to keep the American people safe following their call this morning. Americans overwhelmingly want exactly what President Trump is delivering: strong borders and strict immigration enforcement against the worst illegal aliens, of which there are still hundreds of thousands to deport from the interior of our country. The most peaceful way to carry out this vital public safety mission is for Republicans and Democrats to do it together, and for state and local law enforcement to work together with federal law enforcement. We want to let cops be cops. You wouldn't know this continues to be a very popular policy position from the biased media coverage over the course of the last few days, but polling shows huge support for this exact thing President Trump is calling for. More than 80% of Americans favor deporting illegal aliens convicted of violent crimes. A country unable to deport criminals who enter it illegally is no country at all. The open borders agenda of Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats was already on the ballot on November 5th, 2024, and it was resoundingly rejected. President Trump will never back down from his promise to deport violent criminal illegal aliens and make America safe again, and he welcomes all cooperation in that effort.
Well, this story is far from over, my friends. There's just so much ground to cover here, and Glenn Close demolishing Trump and ICE, good luck. Here's more Cam Higbee. They're on those Signal chats.
I was in the Signal chat for several days before I felt an overwhelming obligation to make the public aware of what was happening. Like you said, there were a lot of other reporters inside the chats, and I just wonder why there weren't wasn't a feeling of obligation from mainstream reporters to leak this. Reuters, who I think people have identified, and again, I'm not saying with 100% certainty that they were in there because I just haven't had time to look into all the names yet. I've just been doing info drops. There was a Reuters car behind us. I think for 2 days, they had a Reuters printout in their windshield right behind us, especially when we were, when I was following a bunch of protesters that were following Greg Bovino around. They dumped a bag of chips on him. He had to deploy that green tear gas. Everybody saw that video. That was that day. There was a Reuters car right behind us, and we were right behind the convoy. So that's what's going on. And the signal chats did get nuked as a result of my reporting. They completely wiped the signal chats, but they've restarted. This is live right now. There they are, calling out license plates and intersections as we speak.
Wow. Calling out license plates. Protesters' tactic exposed. The network was nipped after I exposed it. Cam Higbee explains the communications. When are we going to see Democrats prosecuted for inciting an insurrection? That's the question we all want to ask. The White House, I'm sending Tom Homan to Minnesota. He's not been involved in that area, but knows and likes many of the people there. Tom is tough but fair and will report directly to me. So Tom Homan landing in Minnesota tonight with direct orders from President Trump to report back. The man who built the deportation machine is walking into a war zone where encrypted terrorists are coordinating attacks on federal agents using your stolen welfare money. This is the test case for everything coming next. You see, we're watching the merger of welfare fraud, domestic terrorism, and foreign influence operations in real time. The signal chats prove that this is not spontaneous outrage. It's coordinated warfare against immigration enforcement. When federal agents can't do their jobs without dodging bullets from protesters funded by stolen taxpayer money, we've crossed a line that threatens every community in America. The Minnesota crisis is not an isolated incident. It's a preview of the resistance network that's been building in the shadows. Do you think Tom Homan can restore order before this spreads nationwide? Check out the Next News merch shop and let us know what you think. Wow, that segment ran long. 51 minutes. And if you're curious, Brian, no, there is no timer on my prompter here. So something changed, clearly. Let me see if there's any other. I'm just going to check another link here. Let's see here. Yeah, something's changed for sure. Okay. All right. We have some super chats. Mama Baz. Fire loudmouth Pam Bondi. She needs to stop talking about the rule of law, blah, 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 and arrest more people. We need a yes man at the DOJ. Salty Nationalist dropping 20. It's time to stop this crap once and for all in Minnesota. We have dealt with Antifa during the Floyd BS. Their terror reign is over. Arrest them if they interfere and deport the illegals. No more games. Okay. Hey, Vashran. Glad I'm from a small town, Tennessee. Screw the city. $2. Thank you for that. All right. Okay, we're going to be moving into our next topic here. check Discord. What happened now? Yes, I have you muted, Brian, because you left your mic open during a segment, and it was very distracting. Sounded like somebody was on a treadmill. Which one is your button? Number 4? There. Okay, yeah, I could hear it. It was very distracting. Is there something that you needed to tell me? Okay. All right. Okay, let me know. All right, good. Ready? Democrats are threatening to shut down the entire federal government unless they can defund ICE. Yes, you heard that right. The same agency responsible for removing dangerous criminals from our communities is now under attack by progressives who'd rather see chaos than border enforcement. And who's leading the charge? Well, AOC, of course, calling ICE agents kidnappers and demanding they be stripped of their funding. But here's what they're not telling you about this next shutdown showdown. See, it's not just political theater. This affects your daily safety. Without ICE funding, criminal aliens stay in your neighborhoods. Instead of being deported by your tax dollars, they'll keep flowing to sanctuary cities while actual law enforcement gets gutted. Socially, we're watching the complete breakdown of the rule of law as progressives normalize the idea that immigration enforcement is somehow immoral. The political implications are massive, too, because Republicans have tight margins, but Democrats are betting they can force a shutdown and blame the GOP while your grocery bills, gas prices, and crime rates hang in the balance, all while politicians play games with national security. Yes, we're looking at another shutdown again, but you know what else is under attack while politicians fight? Your joints. And that's not a political issue. That's just life. You see, you're getting older, I'm getting older, it's unavoidable. And until science figures out how to age in reverse, one thing most of us face is joint pain. You've probably tried supplements or creams promising miracles, but let's be real. Most of them don't work. And here's why most people don't get relief. They're not treating symptoms, not the root cause. Golden Revive Plus attacks inflammation at the source with turmeric, boswellia, and other natural compounds that actually work. While Democrats fight over funding, agencies don't let joint pain defund your quality of life. Check the link below for Golden Revive Plus. Now back to the shutdown circus, the sequel. Yes, it gets worse. Republicans like Anna Paulina Luna are now threatening their own shutdown strategy, refusing to pass any spending bills without the SAVE Act attack. So now we've got Democrats threatening shutdown over ICE defunding and Republicans threatening shutdown over election integrity. It's like a game of political chicken where both sides are driving straight at each other, and guess who gets hurt when these cars crash? You do. So Republicans are refusing to let Democrats weaponize the Minneapolis shooting to rewrite the Department of Homeland Security funding. This sets up the battleground. Let's see how the Democrats are doubling down on this new threat. Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock says state Democrats will vote for another government shutdown to defund their law enforcement and smears officers as evil. Warnock's comments give us the Democrat position, but here's the timeline that makes things urgent. The next government shutdown happens in 11 days. Democrats are going to say no ICE, and they'll once again show America they do not stand for America. They stand with dangerous, illegal aliens. And we have this breaking news just in. Shutdown prediction. If Leader John Thune and our GOP in the Senate do not nuke the filibuster, our government will shut down at the end of January. Gunther Eagleman says, bookmark this. More predictions of a second shutdown from after the first one in 2025. Grace Chong. And here is Steve Bannon discussing it on the War Room with Mark Mitchell.
Listen, you're going to miss the fourth quarter numbers because, listen, the reality is we're not going to get to a budget deal. You're not going to get appropriations between now and January 20th. It's going to get kicked down. I think the Democrats are going to sit there because of the hit that President Trump's going to take in the economy. Because you're going to miss the fourth quarter numbers because of the government shutdown. Schumer and these guys who don't care about the American people will logically try to shut down the government again?
I've talked to people about where the state of the economy is, and I used to follow this stuff, and I think that it's a lot of risk of exogenous shocks. Let's put it that way. And I think
what does that mean?
Well, something could just happen, and all of a sudden, this house of cards comes crashing down. There is.
You mean events?
Yeah, there are objectively asset bubbles in the country right now, and people in government probably don't want those asset bubbles at risk.
Well, we're going to find out soon enough in 11 days, right? Speaker Johnson tells Democrats not a single dollar will be cut from DHS or ICE, even if they threaten a government shutdown. This is not a game. If anyone plays political games, you're going to have to take it up with your constituents. Johnson drawing the line in the sand. Republicans are already talking nuclear options. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen says the filibuster must be nuked if Democrats move forward with shutting the government down over ICE funding.
It's absolutely the worst thing that happened. And we're doing everything we can to avoid it. The unfortunate part is, and the president and I spoke at Mar-a-Lago a Monday afternoon about this, and again on Tuesday, on trying to figure out which Democrats could possibly support us on this. Right now, they're signaling that they're going to try jamming the president over all this DHS and Minnesota stuff, which is an absolute ridiculous fight to shut the government over when you just have law enforcement trying to enforce the law, the nation's law. But I believe there's some cooler heads. We've had some conversations the last day and a half, Larry, where a lot of the Democrats that was wanting to reopen the government and some of the ones that that voted to open are willing to work with us. Susan Collins has done a really good job trying to negotiate in between Republicans and Democrats because, we still have to have at least 8 Democrats vote with us because we got Rand Paul that doesn't vote for anything. So that means we start at 52 Republicans, and so we'll have to have 8 Democrats to support us on it. If not, the conversation about busting the filibuster on appropriation bills will probably have to come to conversation in a quick fashion.
So let me back up for a second. Are there any Democrats who have the backbone and the courage to praise Mr. Trump for his negotiating skills in Davos, what he's doing in Greenland and the Arctic, and for that matter, saving the Western Hemisphere from the encroachments of China and Russia? Is anybody willing to stand up? I mean, I know Al Gore was booing at a dinner party, when I knew him, he had manners. I guess those days are over. But is there anybody on the other side of the aisle who's saying, look, Trump is doing the Lord's work here, and we're all coming together. We're going to preserve NATO. Right. We're going to preserve freedom. You're going to preserve the United States. I mean, anybody?
Well, Al Gore is irrelevant today. The only person that would probably really be willing to do that is John Fetterman. Unfortunately, for the Democrat Party, they're not really paying attention to what President Trump is doing on protecting the United States, on truly leading from the front with peace through strength. What has happened underneath the Obama administration, when they totally gutted our military, underneath the Biden administration, to which they totally tried to tear down everything President Trump did, President Trump has actually taken that approach, peace through strength, and that means even in our approach at abroad. What the president is doing with Greenland is smart. I mean, NATO has been warning Denmark for 20 years, Larry, that they need to do something about the activity of Russia and China because it's not just open water. There's a lot of cables, a lot of pipelines that are running in that region, and Russia and China is spending all this time mapping it out. It causes serious concerns that we have for national security reasons. They haven't been willing to do it. President Trump is finally saying, hey, Denmark, by the way, as you know, and your listeners may know, this has been a discussion going on since 1912. Since 1912, the United States has been trying to get control of Greenland because of the national security risk and the shipping lanes it is to the United States. And so this isn't anything new, except President Trump is finally saying enough is enough. Why do we keep talking about it? We've been talking about it for over 110 years now. Let's actually finish what we need, what everybody, even Europe and the United States, knows that needs to be done. Greenland needs to be brought into the United States for the national security of not just the United States, but also Europe.
Well, look, I think they're working that out. But, I mean, coming back home,
right.
you got, correct me if I'm wrong, but ballpark, there's $25 billion been allocated to the Gold Dome so far. Estimates running upwards of 175 to 200 billion, whatever, all right? Whatever is probably not enough. We have to do the right thing to do to protect this country's national security, to protect its safety, stop the encroachments of our adversaries in China and Russia and so forth. A shutdown is exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. I mean, this is no time to cut and run. Give you the last word.
No, Larry, you're right. And we hope cooler heads on the Democrat side will prevail. Unfortunately, you got Chuck Schumer that is not a real leader. He's more of a politician that worries about his elections than he actually does about leading the country. If anybody with a sense of understanding of world affairs would understand that shutting down the government right now would be the worst mistake possible. But Chuck Schumer has not been interested in actually having negotiations. He's not been interested in actually leading his conference. Luckily, we have John Thune.
So Schumer's up to his old tricks, but the filibuster threat escalates the stakes. Now here's the the counter argument from the Democrats.
I believe in secure borders. I believe in enforcing our laws.
Yeah, bullshit.
But I also believe we should be smart and humane about it. Right now, ICE has become the highest funded law enforcement agency in the country, even bigger than the FBI. Its annual budget jumped from around $10 billion to $85 billion. And what are we getting for all that money? An American mom was shot and killed by an ICE agent in Minneapolis. In another incident, ICE officers broke into a U.S. citizen's home, pulled him outside into freezing weather in his underwear before realizing they had the wrong person. That's not targeted enforcement or an efficient use of resources. That's chaos, fear, and waste. And it's happening with an agency that's now bigger than nearly every other federal law enforcement agency combined. Other agencies that actually go after violent criminals. Most immigration violations are civil matters, not criminal ones. But ICE acts like everyone they deal with is a hardened violent criminal. And that mismatch has created chaos, backlogs, and a system that doesn't work. Only 5% of the people picked up by ICE have been convicted of a violent crime.
Oh,
4%
spare me, spare me. Anna Paulina Luna. I have a group of Republican members that refuse to vote to send any appropriations to the Senate unless it includes a rule for the SAVE Act.
Well, look, I actually think that this might be serendipitous in timing, and if I could explain for a moment. So what happens is when the appropriations are going to be rejected by Senate over DHS funding, ultimately that means that those appropriations bills have to come back to the House. And so I've actually formed an alliance with a handful of other Republican members that will refuse to vote on any legislation to send it over to the Senate unless there's something specifically placed in it and something called a rule that would prevent the Senate from stripping out the SAVE Act. So it would force them, if they choose to shut down the government, when they choose to reopen it, they will have to also then to simultaneously vote on the SAVE Act, which would basically save our country with election integrity. So we can play this game of chicken, but I do have a handful of Republicans that will stand with me very strong and ensure that this is done on behalf of the American people. So we're here to deliver.
Congresswoman, both sides are mobilizing their bases, and now the big names are weighing in. AOC calls for ICE to be defunded again. Another losing strategy.
You know, I think first and foremost, the overwhelming majority of Democrats, over 200 Democrats, voted against this DHS and ICE funding bill today. And I think it is extremely important that everyone across the country recognize that. You know, there are hundreds of members of Congress. Some are going to vote differently, but at the end of the day, Democrats stood in almost unanimity against this DHS bill, and that's how it should have been.
But you obviously believe ICE should be abolished, but there are many in your party who are not going that far.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a problem for you?
I think any step in the direction of reining in and cutting the funding of an agency that is attacking U.S. citizens, that are kidnapping 5-year-olds, that are using them as bait to open doors, and that are privately circulating that they can violate everyday Americans' constitutional rights by busting into their doors, they deserve to be defunded. I'll take any step in that direction.
Are you frustrated then that leadership effectively cut a deal to fund them and, implement very limited reforms?
I mean, I look at the votes that are there today, and I think what is most important is that Leader Jeffries stood against this bill, and Democrats voted against it.
Should they block this in the Senate? Should they block this in the Senate?
If I were a member of the United States Senate, I would not vote for funding this ICE. I would not vote for funding ICE. That's what I would do. So, yeah.
Congresswoman DeLauro says, though, that there's other programs in the Homeland Security bill that they would be, caught on the short end if you decided to.
I think, and I'll say in the larger minibus bill, there's things that she negotiated for labor, for healthcare, and she saved a lot of.
Make me a drink.
Essential.
AOC brings the star power to the Democrat push, but here's the bottom line: on some Democrats are actually demanding, threatening a government shutdown over $10 billion in new ICE funding.
These spending bills are here. There's a spending bill for ICE, DHS. Talk
nice
us
hair.
through, Democrats do not control either chamber, but the numbers are so tight, there's opportunity, right?
I think there is an opportunity. Certainly there's an obligation to try to insist on conditions attached to these appropriations or spending bills. The House yesterday approved the ICE budget, the Department of Homeland Security spending bill, by a pretty narrow majority. What they'll try to do in the Senate, without getting too much into the weeds, is to put the Department of Homeland Security spending bill as a package with others to make it more difficult for us to vote against. But I'm a no vote on that spending bill unless there are conditions that require ICE to go to a judge to get a warrant, as well as other kinds of constraints, the use of masks, the non-identification, the unmarked cars. These police tactics, secret police, totalitarian tactics need to be stopped. And just for the record, let me say about the vice president, when he is dismissive about the difference between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant, he ought to know better. He's a fellow Yale Law School graduate. A judge approves a judicial warrant after a finding of probable cause. I have sought them as a U.S. attorney in Connecticut, as a prosecutor. I said to agents at times in the middle of the night, we need to go for a warrant. And literally, we went to a judge's home, and he came padding down in his pajamas and slippers at the kitchen table, authorized the warrant, and we went ahead with the search or the arrest. As opposed to a judicial approval, the administrative warrant is approved by an ICE official. So there is a really distinct difference.
Yeah, key distinctions there.
Blumenthal. That guy's another disgrace to the office. So here's the kicker. While Democrats scream about ICE being ineffective and expensive, they're perfectly fine funding the IRS with 87,000 new agents to audit your bank account. They wanted to fund the agency that removes criminals, but expand the agency that harasses taxpayers. It tells you everything about their priorities. So the bottom line is simple. This shutdown fight reveals who actually cares about your safety versus who cares about virtue signaling. Democrats would rather score political points than protect American communities from criminal aliens. Republicans are trying to force votes on election integrity while keeping law enforcement funded. One side wants to defund the cops who remove dangerous criminals. The other wants accountability in elections. The choice couldn't be clearer. Do you think Democrats will actually follow through on shutting down the government just to defund ICE? Let me know below. And while you're there, check out the Next News merch shop for gear that shows where you stand on keeping America safe. Looks like we have some activity in the Super Chat world. Tamra, looks like she just gave a membership to, let's see, Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes received a membership. Thank you. Tamara Jennings. Okay, we're going to move on to our next topic of the evening. Give me 1 second here. Oh, this is a good story. U.S. finalizes the withdrawal from the World Health Organization. Thank God. All right, we're going to get into this one. After 78 years, America just officially divorced the World Health Organization. Trump pulled the trigger, citing corruption and Chinese influence. But here's what the mainstream media won't tell you about why this withdrawal matters more than you think, and what it means for your family's health decisions going forward. It's not just bureaucratic reshuffling. This affects you directly. When the next health crisis hits, there's no World Health Organization safety net. Thank God. No international coordination on disease and outbreaks. Thank God. Vaccine distribution or pandemic response. Your local health department is now flying solo. Good. Socially, we're watching America reject globalist health mandates that many saw as overreach during COVID. No more foreign influence on American health policy. Politically, this sets a massive precedent. Trump is systematically dismantling international agreements he views as corrupt, and the World Health Organization collected $500 million annually from us, while China paid a fraction. Well, guess what? That money stays home now. But so does the influence over health decisions that could impact American lives. Or, guess what? We could just ignore the World Health Organization altogether. And speaking of protecting what matters most, let me tell you about securing your financial future. If you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means that their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you've already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments comes in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmicks, just clear answers and a strategy built around your goals. Visit nextnewsgold.com. Build your portfolio for the long term. That's nextnewsgold.com. Then back to the massive shift in American health policy. Here's the kicker nobody is talking about. Apparently, we still owe the World Health Organization over $130 million in unpaid dues. Trump's essentially stiffing them on the bill and walking away. That's perfectly fine with me. Meanwhile, China's influence over the organization just got stronger with America gone. Of course it did. They pushed lockdown policies, allegedly covered up the COVID origins. Now they face zero American pushback from within the system itself. And here's Chip Roy. I fully support the Trump administration pulling out of the World Health Organization.
I mean, look, the United States is perfectly capable of being able to engage in our foreign policy and diplomacy and be able to help people around the world using our own resources and our own ability to be able to engage. Because, look, these international organizations, they are ripe with fraud. They are ripe with Marxists and leftists who are trying to undermine America at every turn. The United Nations is a total disaster. The World Health Organization is a disaster. I introduced legislation in 2021 on the heels of the COVID nightmare and how much the WHO was siding with communist China and siding with people who are trying to shut America down and tell us that we couldn't open up, and pushing out all of the vax nonsense. And look, now thankfully, 5 years later, President Trump, we're seeing the fruition of a president that's leading and getting us out of that. You pointed it out, $1 billion every 2 years that we're taking up 20% of their budget. But look, we're spending our time undoing.
Yep. Finally out of the World Health Organization, putting our foot on the globalists. The tweet sets up the political rationale. Now let's dive into the financial argument. Why Trump walked away from the WHO money trail. The U.S. is paying 15 to 20% of the World Health Organization's entire budget. $700 million every year, largest donor by far. Meanwhile, China pays less than %. Second largest economy on earth, population 4 times the U.S. The money story is powerful, but the more we unpack about what this means, Liberation Day 2.0 is what some are calling it. Frank Gaffney. President Trump's decision to withdraw from the United States, from the World Health Organization, excuse me.
It's Liberation Day 2.0. President Trump's decision to withdraw the United States from the World Health Organization becomes final today, ending the direct threat to American sovereignty posed by the WHO's insidious efforts to advance world government. Mr. Trump recognized the danger posed by the largely opaque use of international agreements and diplomatic shenanigans behind closed doors to give unprecedented powers over our public health to the WHO Director General, an Ethiopian communist controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. We want no part of a reprise of Tedros Ghebreyesus' murderous malfeasance during the COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S. can and should continue to lead the world in countering pandemics. The place to start is by recognizing their single most dangerous source, namely the CCP's illegal biological weapons program, which, with Tony Fauci's criminal help, unleashed on us and others the COVID biowarfare attack.
The COVID biowarfare attack. Yeah, you couldn't say that a year ago. We're seeing the ideological framework, but let's get to the specific accusations against the World Health Organization. Here is President Trump on withdrawing.
Peace through strength. But we withdrew from the corrupt World Health Organization. So I remember we were paying $500 million. They were paying 37 or 39 million. And I said, how come? So I withdrew and they called, we'll give you the same deal that they had. I said, well, it should be less than that.
Moving right along here. The corruption allegations are building. Now we're moving from accusations to Trump's own words. Here's what he said. The World Health Organization, nothing more than a corrupt globalist scam.
The World Health Organization has become nothing more than a corrupt globalist scam paid for by the United States but owned and controlled by China. When the China virus reached our shores 3 years ago, the World Health Organization disgracefully covered the tracks of the Chinese Communist Party every single step of the way. For this reason, it was my great honor to terminate America's relationship with the World Health Organization. The United States was paying the World Health Organization almost $500 million a year. When I dropped out, I took it out of there. And for 330 million people, even though China was paying only $40 million for 1.4 billion people. So we had 330, they have 1.4, and we're paying more than 10 times the amount. That's typical for the United States because they don't know what the hell they're doing. Unfortunately, crooked Joe Biden foolishly re-entered the World Health Organization at the full price and without any negotiations or reforms. And now Biden is pushing to bypass the United States Senate to enter a pandemic treaty that would surrender American sovereignty to the World Health Organization, again controlled by China. The draft treaty would require the United States to send vast quantities of medical supplies to other countries in the event of another pandemic, and it would push aggressive censorship of free speech on issues of public health, just like they censored the truth about the Wuhan lab, which I said that's where it came from, remember. Under the next Trump administration, that treaty will be immediately terminated. I would not allow public health to be used as a pretext to advance the march of global government. That's what they're doing, globalists. The United States will withdraw from the corrupt World Health Organization, which, in light of its utter failure on COVID, they had a tremendous disaster on COVID, deserves to be completely abolished and replaced. Then I will work to forge a new coalition of nations that are strongly committed to protecting health while also upholding sovereignty and freedom. I want to thank you very much, but I also want to say this. I could have renegotiated the deal. I could have gone into the World Health Organization for $25 million. Biden didn't take that deal. He's paying almost $500 million. They were so anxious to get the United States back after I terminated the agreement. They were so anxious to get it back that they offered me a deal, $25 to $30 million. And I said, no, I'll wait. Could have gotten it for less, but I didn't want less at that point. We were paying almost $500 million. Could have done it for 25 to 30. Biden took the $500 million deal. He knew he could have gotten back in for less. So why did he pay so much? But that's just one of many things that are wrong with our country. Thank you very much.
That was a message he delivered during the campaign. And now he's making good on that promise. Thank God. U.S. has finalized its withdrawal from the World Health Organization 1 year after Trump announced America was ending it, that relationship. Laura Ingraham, World Health Organization failed during the pandemic, hiding the COVID origins. NIH Director Jay lays out the case. Check this out.
Why is this so important that this finally happened after Trump announced he'd do this a year ago?
Well, it took a year because there were essentially like legal obligations staying for a year. You have to make the announcement, and then a year later you get to pull out. Why is it important? Because the WHO absolutely failed during the pandemic. And you said, Laura, you absolutely nailed it. They pushed the line that China pushed on the world, on the lockdowns, hiding COVID origins, the whole host of things where they utterly failed. And if you look around the world, are they actually serving the purpose they're supposed to serve? Have they really helped make the world healthier? Is U.S. participation in this organization going to make Americans healthier? I think we all know the answer to that question. The answer is absolutely not. And so I'm tremendously happy that this is happening. I mean, I do think we need to have cooperation with countries around the world, and the Trump administration is working to make sure that we have those bilateral agreements in place for that kind of health cooperation. But we don't need the WHO as an intermediary, essentially to push Chinese interests on the American people.
Nope. We can do it ourselves. We can coordinate just the same. The real bombshell, Trump says if they want us back, they need to give us the same deal China got, paying a fraction of what we used to pay. He's treating international health policy like a business negotiation, and frankly, it just might be working. See, this comes down to sovereignty versus globalism in its purest form. Either you believe American health decisions should be made by Americans, or you think we need international oversight. The WHO failed spectacularly during COVID, and that's undeniable. They parroted Chinese propaganda, ignored early warnings, and pushed policies that devastated economies worldwide. Trump's bet is that America can protect its citizens better without them. One thing we do know for sure, we just declared health independence from the global establishment. So do you think that America made the right call leaving the WHO? Check out the Next News merch shop for gear that celebrates American independence from global bureaucrats. Trump needs to abolish the IRS. I believe he's working on that. So there you have it. Tonight, we've witnessed the convergence of forces that threaten to reshape America as we know it. From the Persian Gulf to Minneapolis, from the halls of Congress to international organizations, the connections are undeniable. The USS Abraham Lincoln sits in dangerous waters tonight. This isn't posturing. This is real military escalation with consequences that could spiral beyond anyone's control. Meanwhile, our own government Democrats are so committed to protecting illegal immigration that they're willing to shut down federal operations rather than fund ICE enforcement. Think about that priority system for a moment. In Minnesota, we're seeing the perfect storm of corruption, foreign influence, and violence. Tom Homan doesn't personally deploy to handle routine situations. When the border czar drops everything to fly to Minneapolis, you're looking at a crisis that connects welfare fraud, foreign money, and organized resistance to federal law enforcement. The fact that Ilhan Omar somehow accumulated $44 million while representing one of the poorest districts in America isn't just suspicious, it's mathematically impossible without outside sources. The death of an armed protester during ICE operations has triggered exactly the kind of chaos that foreign actors want to see on American streets. The FBI has traced funding for these protests back to sources that should alarm every patriotic American. You see, this is not grassroots activism. This is coordinated destabilization funded by people who want America weakened. Now we've officially severed our 78-year relationship with the World Health Organization. After their failures during COVID, their deference to China, their attempts to override American sovereignty, this withdrawal represents something bigger than healthcare policy. This is about whether America will govern itself or submit to global bureaucrats who answer to our enemies. Every story tonight connects to the same theme. America fighting for its independence against forces that want us controlled, corrupted, and conquered. Whether it's Iranian threats in the Persian Gulf, Chinese influence through the World Health Organization, or foreign money funding chaos in our cities, the pattern is clear. January 26, 1861 saw Louisiana secede from the Union, fracturing our nation and leading to years of bloodshed. Today's fractures run different lines, but they're just as dangerous. The difference is that this time we're not fighting each other, we're fighting to preserve our republic against external forces that want to see it destroyed. The stakes could not be higher. Military confrontation in the Middle East, corruption scandals reaching Congress, foreign-funded violence in our cities, and international organizations that serve our enemies instead of our interests. These are not separate crises, they are connected. Battles in the same war for America's future. Before you go, grab your gear at the shop. Thanks to everybody who supported us through Super Chats and Rumble Rants tonight. I'm Gary Franchi. This has been the Raw Feed. Stay free.